Kentucky football is just a couple of days away from kicking off their 2024 season, and I think the schedule is actually going to go a lot better for the Cats than most people think.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky football's entire 2024 schedule. I'm going to be predicting every single game on this slate, going to be breaking down why I choose a win or a loss, and then we're going to take a look at the entire schedule and the outlook. Could the Cats make the college football playoff? I certainly think they'll end up being in the conversation. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. You can go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollegeFootball to receive 20% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCFB. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky football's 2024 football schedule. Going to be giving you a prediction here for every single game. Going to be giving you a win, loss, a score prediction as well. And then I'm going to break down in further detail why I think the Cats are going to win or lose. So we'll start here at the top with the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, who are coming to town this weekend, August 31st. As we mentioned on yesterday's preview show, we broke down that game in case you want to go find it on your YouTube or podcast feed. I believe Kentucky's going to beat the Golden Eagles because this is not the Southern Miss of old. This is not the Southern Miss that gave Kentucky fits just a few years ago, and it's not the team that beat them with Nick Mullins in 2016. This team is significantly less talented, and they've got a lot more holes across their roster that really do give me question as to whether or not Will Hall, head coach, will be here towards the end of the season. New offensive and defensive coordinator in Chip Long, and then also as well on the defensive side, we've got, I have it in my notes down here, Clay Bignell, the defensive coordinator at Eastern Illinois FCS program for the last 2 years. He's going to be taking over that side of the ball, but just not a ton here to be really excited about. Tate Rodemaker, how is he going to fit in this system? You've also got a lot of question marks at receiver despite bringing back your 5'9" slot guy, Ty Mims. Defensively, you've got a couple of different transfers coming in, one of them from Purdue, a former four-star coming out of high school, a Coastal Carolina linebacker commitment who was productive 2 seasons ago. I just don't really know if there's a ton here. So I think that Kentucky's going to win this game. 41-17 is what I've got down here. My why, reasons why I stated on yesterday's show, and reasons I just reiterated here. Week 2. Your SEC on ABC matchup, I believe it's the first SEC on ABC matchup of the SEC ABC slate now that we've kind of transitioned away from CBS, which is just a shame. By the way, the music that ESPN and ABC have chosen for these matchups, they just released it today on Twitter. It could be better. It could be better. There is room for improvement. At least we know that. South Carolina coming to town to Lexington. I think Kentucky is going to win this game. 27-17 is the final score that I have. Why do I think that the Wildcats are going to end up winning this game? I think that South Carolina has pieces. I think Lenore Sellers could end up being a solid quarterback for them, albeit against the fact that he will be wearing glasses on the field, if I'm not mistaken, which looks a little dorky, but hey, if you're out there slinging the rock and you're scoring points, I don't think anybody really is going to care. If anything, they'll think that it makes you look cool or unique. But South Carolina, they've got pieces, but they are not as complete as Kentucky is across the entire starting 22. There are questions about South Carolina in the trenches, their offensive and defensive line. Can it be better than it was a season ago? And last season, the offensive line was horrendous. Can you take advantage of some of the skill position talent that you have both in the defensive backfield and at receiver. Again, I think a lot of it has to do with how you fare across the lines. Shane Beamer, can you get it done? I don't think they're going to be able to get it done this early in the year, especially with Sellers in his second game at QB, starting as the full-time starter, I should say, for the Gamecocks. So I think Kentucky's going to win that game, and I think they're going to win it by 10. Week 3. A game that I so desperately want to pick Kentucky to win. The Georgia Bulldogs. They're going to be coming to town. I think Kentucky loses this game. I've got it at 35-16 right now. Why do I think Kentucky's going to lose this game? I think that this right now, if you're looking at like where you could get Georgia in the schedule, this is not the spot you want them in. Vandegrift, week 3 as a starter, still figuring things out. You're trying to kind of get everybody together cohesively on the offensive side of the ball. Chip Trainum's not going to be available, if I'm not mistaken. This may actually be his first game back. I don't know. But there's a lot of, I think, things that could be solved later in the year if you face off against Georgia later on. That won't be answered, or at least fully answered, in this game. So, for that reason, because of Georgia's talent level, because of how solid they are in the trenches, I'm going to take the Bulldogs to end up winning this game. Again, 35-16 is the final score. And then as we get closer towards the end of September, we haven't exited September yet. The Ohio Bobcats, September 21st. I think Kentucky's going to win this game to improve to 3-1. 1-1 in SEC play. 45-10 is the final score that I have. Why do I think Kentucky is going to beat the Bobcats? Well, Ohio lost quarterback Curtis Rourke to the transfer portal. They lost a ton of different guys to the portal and to graduation. And they just don't have a ton of high-end skill position talent. There's not a whole lot here to be really thrilled about. You just look at the roster and go, that's a middle-of-the-pack MAC team or below the bottom-of-the-barrel MAC team. Not a whole lot to be thrilled about. Of course, we talked about this on yesterday's show. Kentucky struggled in matchups like this in seasons past, and they had an NFL quarterback for the last 2 years, or excuse me, for the 2 years with Will Levis. Who knows? Devin Leary with the Ravens. We'll see how he does, but I don't want to see that here. The reason I sigh is because this is right about the time in the schedule where you say, okay, you should win by somewhere between 17 to 1 million points, and you end up winning by 17-14, just barely at the end because you pulled away, even though the game was way too close for way too long. Kentucky's better. Kentucky's better talent-wise. They're playing at home. This team lost a lot in the Bobcats. I think Kentucky should win this game. So 3-1. 1-1 in SEC play. Heading into what I believe will be the game that sparks a massive run for the Kentucky Wildcats. Before we continue along here with our preview, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy absolutely helps me whenever I crash right after lunch. And if you crash after lunch, you're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after we have lunch. So let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. There's zero sugar, and it's a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. And 5 Hour Energy, their website has all different kinds of flavors. My personal favorite is grape. I'm a big grape flavor guy. Watermelon, tropical burst, berry, grape. There's a flavor for everyone out there. You can try them all, and you can also kind of mix and match 12 or 24 packs. So if you want to try out a bunch of different flavors, which I would strongly encourage you to do so, you can do that, and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5 Hour Energy, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Again, that is code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, continuing along here on the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Thank you so much to everybody that has gotten us over the hump. 13,000 subscribers, 13,000 of you. Just absolutely insane to think about. Thank you so much to everybody that's joined up. And hey, if you're new, would appreciate it if you subscribe. Got a lot of fun Kentucky football and basketball content coming your way as we kick off here. We are less than 72 hours away from kickoff. I am so excited. Let's keep it pushing here. Right now, we have Kentucky at 3-1, 1-1 in the SEC. And I teased this game here, September 28th, I think could be the pivotal point. The thing that sparks a Kentucky run in the middle of the season, and that is a game at Ole Miss. I think Kentucky wins this game. I think Kentucky goes on the road into Oxford against what will probably still be a top 10, maybe even top 5 Ole Miss team, and I think the Cats win. Why do I think Kentucky wins? Well, it goes back to what we were talking about just a few episodes ago. If Kentucky did not shoot themselves in the foot multiple times, they would have walked away from Oxford in their previous contest with a victory. We gave the game away last time this contest was played. We should have won. Obviously, the two teams, very different in makeup. You've got some more talent on the defensive line if you're Ole Miss. Kentucky's offensive line, a lot stronger than it was 2 seasons ago. Receivers are now grown up, more mature. You have Jackson Dart heading into his final season of collegiate football, who's really, really solid. There are a lot of different things that are different about these two squads. I'm curious to see what Ole Miss has at receiver. And yes, Lane Kiffin offenses are going to go, and things are just going to happen. And then you've got guys like Dayton Wade, who I believe are still here, that can lead this receiving core. But what does the depth look like? And what does that look like against Kentucky's secondary? If the Wildcats don't commit a ton of turnovers like they did previously, and they make their field goals and they don't have bad special teams moments overall, they win the game. I think Stoops and his staff can prepare a game plan that can be executed well by their team, well enough to go and get a win. I think Stoops and company pick up a massive road win against a top 10 team in Ole Miss. 34-30 is the final score that I have written down here. Then you return home in what is just a perfect trap game against the Vanderbilt Commodores, October 12th. 4-1, 2-1 in the SEC. You're feeling good. You're ranked at this point. There's no way you're not. I think Kentucky ekes this one out. 31-24 is the final score that I have here. Why do I think Kentucky wins by about a touchdown? Diego Pavia, transfer quarterback for Vanderbilt, came in from New Mexico State, just a physical, hard-nosed kid. I think he would be somebody that could come in and lead the Commodores and kind of try and gut out a win. I don't think it'll be enough, considering I think very highly of this Kentucky team this season. I don't really know if it's going to matter much towards the end of the game against a more talented team, how Pavia and company sort of try and gut it out again, like I said earlier. There's just not enough there on Vanderbilt's roster with Clark Lee to make me think that there is an upset brewing. Of course, I could have said that a couple of years ago when Kentucky lost to Vanderbilt, and we saw what happened there. So I think this is a trap game, perfect trap game, but nonetheless, the Wildcats win it to improve it to 5-1, 3-1 in the SEC. And this is a game that I hope I didn't skimp over when talking about all of these wins that I think Kentucky's going to pick up this year. And that's a game at Florida, October 19th. 5-1, 3-1 in the SEC. I think Kentucky wins this game. But I want to be clear here. It would not shock me if Kentucky lost this. Why do I think Kentucky wins this game? Cats are more talented right now. I think Kentucky is a more complete team, top to bottom, as a roster than the Florida Gators are. I don't think a ton of people would strongly push back on that. It's just the direction of Florida's program right now underneath Billy Napier. Not a whole lot of things are going well. The recruiting for next season is right now abysmal in the SEC. They're ranked underneath Kentucky by a few spots nationally, and Kentucky's created a winning streak against the Gators. Sure, they could lose, but I'd favor Kentucky right now. I think that 6-1, you have a bowl berth by October 26th. 23-21 is the final score prediction for me here. Okay, and then a game that I talked about just an episode or so ago against the Auburn Tigers. Kentucky heading in 6-1, 4-1 in the SEC. I think Kentucky wins this one too. 27-19. Why do I think Kentucky ends up winning this game? I think these two rosters are very comparable on paper. And I think that being at home for Kentucky makes the difference in this contest. That's kind of it. At the end of the day, I think these two teams are similar in terms of just talent on their roster and in terms of ability to develop, to scheme against a team that is on a similar playing field as them. I think that they are very comparable. I think this game will be very, very close. But at the end of the day, I have Kentucky winning by 8 points, 27-19, to improve to 7-1. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where things get really, really tough towards the back end. Can Kentucky keep things going at 7-1? Can they find themselves in the college football playoff conversation? We'll break it down, wrap it up here in just a moment. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book, and today we have something a little different for you guys, because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel literally any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that is FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Today's episode is also brought to you by Factor Meals. You can fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to those meals to choose from every single week, you'll have new flavors to explore. Again, you can crush your wellness goals this summer and fall with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. It is an incredible deal. Again, factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. All right, wrapping up the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. So we've gotten to the tough part of the slate. Obviously, the entire schedule is incredibly tough, but this is, I think, the most difficult part of Kentucky football's upcoming schedule. And I want to remind you guys, before we wrap this up, by the way, and we kind of break down whether or not I think Kentucky has a shot at the college football playoff, let me know what you think about this year's upcoming schedule. Give me your record prediction. Tell me how you think the schedule is going to go for this offense and defensive for Mark Stoops and company. I'd love to hear you in the comments below. At LockedOnUK on Twitter is where you can find me as well. Tennessee Volunteers. Kentucky rolling in 7-1, 5-1 in SEC play. You are, at this point, in the college football playoff conversation. You are no longer Ole Miss in the top 10 being upset. Or excuse me, you're no longer playing against teams like Ole Miss in the top 10 being upset. You are Ole Miss at this point, hoping that you don't get upset or lose. Just outright to a better opponent. This is a game where I think it would be like a minor upset. A loss at Tennessee 38-28 is what I've got here. Why? I think Tennessee quietly, and I hate to say this, quietly is walking into the season with one of the better rosters in college football. Good in the trenches. Solid in the trenches. Fun skill position players. Solid linebackers. Just overall, a strong identity. They know what they are, and they go out and they play their brand of football. Nico I believe it's Yama Liava. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. I had it written down and ready to go before we started here, and I've since botched it. Anyway, Nico Yeah, now I can't say it. Yama Liava. Goodness gracious. I believe that he's going to pan out. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. And playing at home in a rivalry that Tennessee has had a lot of success in recently. Again, a team that knows its identity, that has really pushed around some Mark Stoops teams as of late. 38-28, I think that's fair. I think this is fair. Puts Kentucky at 7-2, heading into their game against Murray State, the Racers. I think Kentucky wins 55-17. Why? Do I need to say anything other than it's Murray State? Fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever I need to do to make sure Kentucky doesn't drop this random game here in between Tennessee and Texas. Please don't. 55-17. On the road at Texas. This is interesting because I think Kentucky is the type of team to give Texas problems. Physical up front on both ends. Strong running game. I think Kentucky at the end of the year is going to have a strong backfield. A quarterback that is extremely talented. And a coach that knows how to go on the road and win in Stoops and compete in Stoops. You roll in 8-2, 5-2 in the SEC. You're still ranked high, still got a shot. I think that right now I'm taking Texas to win this one. It's a top 5 roster in sport. It's on the road and it's in Austin. Yes, there is a world where Kentucky makes this uber competitive or even wins outright. I don't know if this late in the year you can favor Kentucky over Tennessee or over Texas. I put UT down. Just read it as Tennessee. 36-31 is the final score that I have written down here. A loss for the Kentucky Wildcats. And then to round out the season, round it out on a positive note, 8-3, 5-3 in the SEC. I think they get a win against what will end up being a good Louisville team. 40-31. Why? We could dive into the analysis. We could tell you about players. We could tell you about matchups. I think Kentucky owns this series. That's where I leave it. That's what I put down in my notes. We own this series. We're going to win at home. 9-3 to end the year. 5-3 in the SEC with losses to, again, Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia. Your biggest win being over the Ole Miss Rebels. Solid wins against Florida and Auburn as well. Is that enough to get you into the college football playoff? I think it puts them firmly in the conversation at 9-3. But does it confidently put them in over a couple of other candidates? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. 34 points per game is what the average is here. 23.7 points allowed per game. Pretty, it's not the widest of margins for a 9-3 team, but of course, I think a lot of these games are going to be tightly contested for the Cats. And I think at the end of the day, they'll prevail in some, they'll lose in others. And 9-3 is a solid year for Mark Stoops. What do you do? Building upon this in future seasons? I really do think, now that we are merging into this bigger SEC, my concern earlier this year, last year on the show, was Kentucky may get left behind. As a middle-of-the-pack team, they may slide down to a bottom 4th team in this league because of recruiting, because of whatever it may be, because just how many resources other programs have. But if you pick up the wins, the recruiting, which has gotten really good recently, it's going to continue to come. It's going to continue to flourish. You're going to get the resources. You have the resources. You have a lot of money poured into this program, no doubt. 9-3, I think, is a really good start. I think you can build on this. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Kentucky football going 9-3. That's where I've got them. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_ and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.